One of the things, that I think about, we all may not start well in this life, but we have opportunities to make sure that we all finish well. And we have to take advantage of those opportunities to elevate ourselves when those opportunities appear to us. And, having education, having mentors and people who are around us, a strong community can help us to elevate from where we started.
When I think about the MLK legacy, of course, I just think of living at a time where the community pulled together. When you look at a lot of the history, African American women started the SCLC, which, Martin Luther King and all the co-founders that were the face of the organization and fought diligently for all the things that needed to happen in order for us to make the progress that we made. But it took a community of churches and schools and neighborhoods pulling together to fight and make sure that we have justice and equality for all. And so when I think of his legacy, I think of the progress that we've made and just wanting to pull back some of those initial elements of partnering to achieve what we need to achieve in the future.
It's a great reminder that A, you got to put God first in everything, but B, you got to fight for what you want. Like, the days of being passive and just hoping that it's going to happen, that's not real life. Like, he got up, he fought, he did the sit-ins, he spoke up when he saw injustices. He was always, a voice for the little man. And I feel like that's what we have to do. Like, we can't just sit there and wait on God. Like, we got to go out and spread the good word and fight for what's right.
Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
Just as a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
What is the percentage of times that you come to this table having no idea what we're going to talk about? Would you say half the time?
I would say more than half.
More than half.
Half the time. I would say 90%.
90% of the time?
I have no idea
and
what's going to happen.
That?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And then I think the more we've done it, the more I prefer it because it really is just us having a conversation.
It is. It totally depends on the person. Like, I'll take our lead pastor couple. Lisa wants to know. Give her as many notes as you possibly can just because she wants to familiarize herself with all of the thoughts and stuff that we're thinking about. Josh is like, nah, don't send me any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It just totally depends.
Yeah, I'm like, it's on my calendar. I'll show up.
Yeah. So we are recording this on January the 3rd. Isn't it the 3rd?
It is
the
3rd.
Do you like New Year's?
I do
really?
like New Year's. Yeah. It just, even though it's like, it's just another day, New Year's feels emotionally and physically to me like a new beginning. Dang. Like, I just love New Year's.
And I wonder if that goes, I wonder if that has anything to do with the lack of celebrating Christmas. Because, well, here's what. The reason why I say that is because for me, January has always been paired with Christmas over, going back to school, and it's just kind of like I think January is my least favorite month.
Really? So I will say that I have good friends who also love Christmas, have Christmas traditions, and they also love the New Year.
Right.
And this will, like, Amy's not here, but she would appreciate this. My Christmas tree is still up, and I'm probably not going to take it down for another week because I do enjoy looking at it. So, but now I love, like, I usually spend the last couple weeks of December going back through my journal for the year and, like, reflecting on the year and then, like, going into January looking ahead. So it always, like, I don't know, there's a sweetness for me about like looking back on what God's done and then like imagining like what's going to happen this year.
Cool. I actually, for the probably first time in my life, I made, I don't know if I even formally made it like a New Year's resolution, but I did decide last year that I wanted to do this, and I saw it to the very end. I read 100 pages a week.
A week? That's awesome.
Because there's so many books that I want to read. I mean, I've got a list. I've got an app with all the books I want to read, and I just did the math. I was like, if I read 100 pages a week, I mean, multiply that by the number of weeks, that's tons of books. Yeah. I was like, I got to.
That's incredible.
I got
it. Your reading list, is it a mixture of things? Is it fiction, nonfiction?
No fiction.
Like, no fiction.
No fiction.
It's all nonfiction.
It's all theology, mental health, and history. And, history being biographies also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm reading a book right now. It's the deadliest. I mean, it's just so intriguing to me. It's the deadliest storm in American history because it was in the 1900, 1900, and they didn't have any technology. So, Lynn, I'm in the part of the book right now to where the kids are playing outside. They have like homemade rafts. They're riding in the streets that are completely flooded. Everybody's laughing, giggling. Oh my gosh, the water's up to our knees. It's a hurricane with sustained 150-mile-an-hour winds. 6,000 people died. Like, this is just 1900. And it's just like, I knew that we didn't have the technology going back, but I've never thought about what did we do when hurricanes just came and you had no idea.
Right.
And then they're going into like historical stories of like sailors back in the day. You just rode right into the thing and you had no idea. I mean, it's crazy.
That is insane.
6,000 people. Like now, when a hurricane comes through, it doesn't matter how bad it is. Death toll's usually under 100 just because everybody got out of the way or knew what to do. But, it's crazy. Yeah. What is that? Is there something wrong with me that I enjoy reading tragedy? And
I mean,
have you seen the movie The Impossible?
No, I haven't.
It's based on the tsunami of 2004. It's a family that was vacationing out there. It's really good. So people are about to hear from Deloris Mastriani. She married an Italian guy, so can I say Mastriani, or is that bad?
You can contact Joey Svendsen at Seacoast.org.
I mean, listen. Miss Deloris also said that her husband's a chef, so how can I not think?
Right. Yeah.
And then Tamara Brown, I told them something that you told me, Lynn, and I don't know if we fully unpacked this, the two of us, but you told me that your given name is Sherelle. Mm-hmm. But over the years, you have gone with Lynn. And am I remembering correctly that it is because of stereotyping other people have of black women?
No, it's not because of. Like, it didn't start because of that. But over time, I realized that I started getting different reactions. And so I started going by Lynn in like middle school.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't the trigger for me becoming Lynn, but in going by my middle name, there is a discrepancy between the way people respond when they haven't met me face to face and Lynn versus Sherelle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I will ask you this as we transition to these ladies and Pastor T, some similar line of questioning that I had for them. What would you say is the level of challenge for, let's start with a woman in the workforce, but then let's take it a step forward, an African-American woman in the workforce. How challenging is it nowadays? And let's say Lynn moves to San Diego, California to start from scratch in 2024. Do you have significant setbacks, in your opinion, due to your gender and or race?
That is a nuanced question. I mean, I can't say a blanket.
30 seconds. I'm just kidding.
I can't say a blanket yes. I can't say a blanket no.
Because you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
Right.
And that's kind of, and I think we've had this conversation before, that's kind of what you carry into a situation. You walk into a situation with people you don't know, you've never been with, and you're like, are they treating me like that because they're just not a good person, or is there something behind that? And so I would say in some places, yes. In some fields, yes. And probably no, too. You know, I think if you were sending me to Louisiana, to a town that, you know, has historically and may still be segregated, and I'm going into an environment where there hasn't been a lot of diversity, would being a woman and a Black woman start off harder than if I had been something else, probably. But if you're sending me to a big city where there's a lot of diversity and a lot of ethnicities, right, and I'm going into a field or a career where there has been a lot of diversity, is it gonna be different? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's just a nuance. I don't think I can give a blanket yes or no, but I think it's there in some places.
That makes sense. Well, I don't think it was intentional, but we both gave each other gifts today. You brought a piece of beef jerky because it ended up in your stocking.
Well, it wasn't a stocking, but someone gave me a present, a basket that had beef jerky.
Do they listen to this podcast? Or are they going to be upset that you just gave your beef jerky away?
No, I don't think so.
And then I gave you a gift of sparing you from another race conversation.
Although we did have a little bit of a race conversation, so you didn't really.
That's true. Thanks for pointing that out. In honor of Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King Day, I wanted to focus our conversation, like I said, on African American women. So we have two fellow Seacoasters in Deloris Mastriani and Tamara Brown, and we're talking Black women.
That's awesome. Can't wait to hear.
All right. All right, so I want to get some background information on these two, but before that, I got to know, how did you approach them about this podcast? Because I don't know if I said anything to you other than, hey, I want to do a podcast episode on Black women. So how did you ask them? Hey, there's a Seacoast podcast episode. You want to come on? It's about Black women.
Pretty much.
Oh goodness. Well, let's get y'all's background just so people know who we're talking to. Obviously, Pastor T's a regular voice on here, but let's start with Deloris. Give us a little bit of snapshot of your life.
Well, I've been in Charleston for about 13 years. I moved from Greenwood, South Carolina, which is in the upstate of South Carolina, about 13 years ago for work. And I started at Seacoast Summerville, and I attended that campus until about 2018 when I got married and moved to the Dream Center. My husband is actually a volunteer at the Dream Center, so I followed him to Seacoast, North Charleston.
Nice. How about professional snapshot?
So I'm currently working in HR. I work at Boeing as a staffing specialist. I've been there for about 13 years as well.
Yeah. And master's degree from Clemson. And
yes,
then your undergrad was?
I actually have a master's degree from Clemson University in Human Resource Development, a bachelor's degree in Business Administration from Landon University, and associate degree in marketing from Piedmont Technical College.
So smarter than us.
Way smarter than us.
Hey, I've lived here my whole life, and I am still not used to this. She tells me she's got a 31-year-old daughter. I'm thinking she's in her 30s or 40s. It just never ceases to amaze me how young you folks look.
What do you mean, you folks?
Is it okay for me to say black don't crack?
Unless you smoke it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you look wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And you haven't even told me your age, but if you have a 31-year-old daughter, my goodness. All right, little snapshot from you.
Awesome. My name is Tamara Brown. I've been in Charleston for about 12 years. I also moved here for employment. Proud mom of 3 boys who fell in love with Seacoast years ago under the leadership of Pastor T, and attended various activities. The church has been the foundation for a lot of the support that I needed to navigate through life's challenges and, working challenges and a lot of things that you that life demands of you. So
right.
Just honored to be here today and be a part of the discussion.
Yeah. Thankful for both of y'all. And what's a little bit of your background as far as professional education? And
professionally, I am a fulfillment manager at the Boeing Company. Unlike Deloris, who attended Clemson, I'm a huge Gamecock fan.
All right.
So I did graduate from the University of South Carolina at 19 and have just been over 20 plus years of career building and in supply chain, business operations, finance, different areas, different companies, and different specialties.
Yeah. Carolina. Goodness.
At 19. What were you doing at 19? I was not graduating at 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working since I was 14, so it's been quite some time.
Yeah. So my second year of school teaching, my boss was an African-American woman. She's the assistant principal, and we were outside recess. And I mean, this is, I would say, my learning when it comes to systemic racism and these sorts of things was like zero. Like I just didn't have an awareness of it. And so she was very kind and gracious to me when I asked this. Now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh. But I asked her, I was just like, here we are in 2000. I'm like, Miss Campbell, like, we're obviously all equal now. Like, you didn't have a harder time, getting this job, going through school. And she just is kind of smiling. She's like, no, things not really that equal, not with male, female, not with race or anything like that. But I'm curious when it comes to y'all's professional journey. Obviously, everybody's is different, but how much of a challenge did you guys experience that y'all would just think was due to A, being a woman, and then B, being a Black woman? And I know it's probably a harder thing to talk, because you don't want to brag on yourself. Like I beat higher odds, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that it's. I mean, we can start at female, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I would say my challenges from an educational standpoint, more so than professional. I think I've been fairly fortunate to work in good environments where I don't experience all of the barriers or stereotypes that most hear about. But from an educational standpoint, I would say at a young age, I'm from Casey, South Carolina, which is right outside of Lexington. Faced some challenges in my career counselor. I remember telling her I'm going to graduate early. And she was like, you're going to graduate early? I'm like, yeah, I'm on schedule to graduate early. So I'll be wrapping up next year. And she's like, are you sure you're going to be able to get into a college? I mean, as a female, you may have some challenges. Wow. And, just fighting the odds and always being determined to prove that I can do this.
Right.
And believing in myself and praying and, seeking God and asking for him to support me through it, no matter what's going on. And he's just always carried me through.
Yeah. So that was more of a gender skepticism.
Right.
Yeah. And then, I mean, once you were in the depths of college and everything, did you feel like you were treated equally? Didn't have...
I would say that I was treated equally, but it was noticed that I was the minority in the class. Of course, at USC, we had hundreds of students could be in one class, and being the only minority, of course, stuck out. And a lot of individuals were, celebrating like, hey, we're glad you're here. We're glad that you are a part of the journey and of learning and able to participate and bring a different point of view. I noticed I was sought after to help with certain projects just to get a different, thought pattern behind whatever we were researching. So didn't really have those challenges at the university. I had peers that spoke to me about challenges that they had with different professors or different things that had happened that made them uncomfortable. But I think because my major was criminal justice when I initially went, I had more so pre-law type courses, so I didn't face some of the other challenges that other students had.
Yeah. How about you?
One of the things that I think about, graduating from high school, about the whole idea about going to college. Both of my parents worked in the textile mills. There were 5 of us, 5 girls. So the idea of going to college was not something that was really spoken about in our household. But I was involved in a church, and I had a pastor's who are surrounding me. And, they really helped me to see beyond where I was at. I ended up going to a technical school. At one point in my journey, we didn't even have a car. One of my friends, gave me a ride to make sure that I attended classes and went to work so that I could graduate. So I just saw the hand of God on me, how he put provision in place ahead of me so that I would make sure that I would graduate, and that's so important to me.
Yeah. Do y'all think that, so if you think about y'all's journey, your, specifically professional journey, and let's say you started on that journey 30 years ago, be like night and day. I mean, would you even go so close to say almost impossible to get where you two are at if y'all started, let's say, in the 60s? Way more challenging? I mean, just kind of from a historical perspective.
I think from the historical perspective, the laws back then would have prevented certain activities. But, because you understand that you need those things, you need an education, that you need to work. You may not work in the particular areas that you could at that time, but you can work in areas that you could. Mm-hmm. And just taking advantage of those opportunities.
Absolutely. I'd say I have a mentor who would, working during that time and has always inspired me and shared with me her journey of challenges, being a female in an engineering environment and one of the only one at the table sometimes that has a seat at the table. But she often stressed how you don't give obstacles power. And that was her quota that helped her to transform and make it through most situations. Additionally, my great aunt is Linda Martell, who's the first African-American woman to sing on national television. So nice. Having individuals like that in your life, role models that you can look up to and who can share the importance of you being successful, because so many others before you have fought for you to have what you can have. So go after whatever you want, has been instrumental for me.
Yeah. Yeah. We get in, we've talked about racial relationships, reconciliation a lot at this table. And one aspect of the conversation that we discuss often is describing the progress that we have made since the civil rights movement. And I thought it was really interesting what you asked T earlier before we started recording is, does this younger generation appreciate what was done during the civil rights movement? As a whole, are we way better as a society? Have we moved just a little bit? Because there's definitely some things that have changed a lot. And an example that I use often is I was watching this documentary on the LA riots, and I was blown away by things that police officers were saying on camera. Like very racist stuff. And I was like, they said that and they got away with it? Like, oh my gosh. Whereas nowadays, at least in the public eye, you don't say certain things. I don't know how indicative that is as far as how people's hearts have changed here in 2024. But when it comes to equality in America, would you three, I mean, how would y'all say that we've progressed?
I mean, we've definitely come a long way. Like that's the obvious. But there's still so much, like we got so far to go.
Right.
I think there's a generation of people, because they have seen the far left, that they don't realize that we still got to keep pushing.
That's a really good point. Because we hear the horror stories, we hear how bad things were. So for someone like me in my position, it would be easy to be like, oh, look at all the progress. If I don't have a knowledge of the systemic aspects of it, then I don't see all the stuff that still needs to be done.
Right. Or think about like your dad, who would see people having to go to the back of a restaurant in order to be served. Mm-hmm. Like he's going to think that America isn't a great place for brown people.
Right.
especially if he don't have any brown friends that say, no, we still need to do X, Y, and Z. We still need to pour into these schools where these kids live. We still, like, he's going to be like, man, we've made so much progress. I'm going to be able to die in peace because I have done a great work.
Yeah. So I want to go, I just don't want to miss anything. I want to go very general and just throw this out there. What are some other stereotypes that people in general walk with when it comes to the African American community? Maybe specifically women, but just as a whole.
I think one of the things that I think about is when it comes to just, skill sets and things like that, just personally knowing that I'm doing what I can to, make sure that I'm educated, that I'm knowledgeable about subjects. I don't want to be stereotyped as not knowing or not qualified or anything like that. I want to bring my whole self to the table.
Mm-hmm. So, as you were saying that, I thought to myself, what if you were, and I'm not even talking race here, but let's just say you have an opportunity to talk to a young woman who, sure, I mean, she's made some bad decisions because everybody makes bad decisions in their youth and into adulthood as well, but especially as kids. But you're talking to a woman who has 3 or 4 kids. She's fighting homelessness, trying to make sure the rent is paid, but getting to work is a huge challenge because she's got to get her kids to places. Just the challenges of a single parent, and you have an opportunity to encourage a woman who she feels like she's in a no-win situation. Like there's no way out of this. I think we've all had that feeling of, man, how do I get out of this situation? Like, how would you mentor a woman who seems to be in just the depths? Because you're coming from a perspective of you're in a really good place in life, Right
now I am.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the case years ago. As I said earlier, I got a master's from Clemson.
Yeah.
That was at 43 years old. So that was 13 years ago. I was a single mom working in Greenwood, South Carolina. And my daughter wanted to go to college. And I knew I had to help her. So, after prayer, I enrolled at Clemson. And that was hard because I was working full time. And also I was working in the ministry. And that was something that I had thought about doing over, years and years and years, but I didn't do it. But at that time, it was the right time. We know that, hard work and education is something that is really essential. So, the thing is that even though she may be at a place where she's not able to pay rent or she's not able to do certain things, that there's a starting point where we partner with God. Mm-hmm. And we move forward in His plan so that He can move us from one place to another. And it's not going to be easy, but having a small community around you, having small groups and pastors and, mentors in the community can help you move from one place to another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I would say that's pretty much summarizing my journey. Moving here, newly divorced, stressed, worried about the boys having a positive male role model and being humble enough to go to church, seek God, build my relationship with Him, and lean on others like Pastor T, who, can show me that there are programs that could help me. There are resources that I could apply for. I, was inspired by other professionals around me to earn a different certification every year, learn something new, a skill set that you can use to help you get ahead. So everything that Deloris just said, absolutely point on. Just praying with God, leaning on Him, being honest with yourself about where you are, what you may need to change, how you can view things differently. Mm-hmm. Fast prayer, study, work, and lean in with others who will support you.
Yeah. Yeah. when you, as a single parent who is a woman, what are the sorts of things that kind of in real time you see your sons go without when it comes to, you said a male role model, like how, from your vantage point, how significant of a shortcoming is that for them not to have someone in the house?
It's huge. I mean, I know there are tons of times where there are things that, and only because they do have a mentor now.
Right.
We've been fortunate to have a wonderful, wonderful male mentor in our life through the E3 mentoring program for the past 8 years. And it's interesting sometimes because I'll try to talk to them about something and, they may not open up to me, but then I might get a text from their mentor to say, hey, they called me about this, or they called me about something specific that happened. And I just want to let you know, this is the advice I gave them. So, they may come to you or they may need support. So there are some topics that, young men may not want to talk to their moms about, young African-American men. Specifically for me in my personal situation, we come from a very diverse family, diverse background. My middle son was actually, at school and was unfortunately called a derogatory name. And he didn't really know how to deal with it, what to do about it. And, the school kind of downplayed what happened, but he's able to lean in with his mentors to talk about how it made him feel, how he wants to address it, how to properly address it and respond to it. So
the school downplayed it.
Yeah, very much so. Downplayed the situation. But, that's just the challenge that you face sometimes.
Yep.
And when you talk about being in the world, right? We're in the world. These things can happen. It's just having a strong foundation for them to have others besides me to be able to talk to and lean on and go through things with.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
What?
I let them go first.
Go for it.
They gave all these great politically correct answers, and now here comes
Now we're
the
going
ignorance.
to T.
Right. So
here's the T perspective.
I honestly,
we're gonna have to have a nickname for that. Like, all right, bring out the T.
Yeah. I feel like America downplays the importance of Black women. And I say that because of my mom. And I think about all of the things that she overcame. And I think about, so like you, for instance, your kids don't want for anything because you sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how many, like if you ever have the opportunity to hire a single mom who's put together with multiple degrees, you should probably seriously consider it, because the sacrifices that she's had to make to get to that point, to juggle being a mom, to juggle, like, to be able to do the things that they're able to do and go over the obstacles that they have to go over. I can't even put into words how important that is, mm-hmm. and what it would bring to a team.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she's already going to be looked down because she's a girl. She's going to be looked down on because she's brown. So it's going to be harder for her to do all of the things. So if she's here, then you already know that you're going to be hiring a champion, because she's already proven that she's an overcomer.
Yeah. See, I need for you to brag on the Black women. They're not going to brag on themselves.
I know they ain't.
We just see it as a part of the day to day. It has to get done at the end of the day.
Right. Right.
You have to be able to take care of your children and provide for them. And, my heart just skipped a beat when Deloris was talking about, wanting her child to go to college, for me, I struggled with that recently, having 2 boys, and they're back to back, right? How am I going to afford college? How am I going to make sure they're taken care of? And I figured it out. You make a way so that they don't have the struggles or any concerns. And it makes me think of what T's saying, though. Sometimes I think we as Black mothers, we do so much for our kids that they don't necessarily understand the real struggles or understand the real world and how difficult it can be. But they do have lessons where they learn. My son Jay is in college now. He's getting his first couple of bills. Yeah. So he's learning to appreciate, all that his mom has done and sacrificed. And he's like, Mom, how did you handle all these bills and pay for me to go to private school and pay to have a car? And, I never heard you talk about where I'm going to get gas money from, because he's like, gas is expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, you just push through because you have to make it.
Yeah.
But you also know that with God supporting you, you're going to make it.
Right.
I actually saw the hand of God move. I remember Brittany was getting ready to, graduate, and she had her tuition due. And I was at the McDonald Choir showcase, and Dorinda Clark was there.
Mm-hmm.
And she was on stage, and she gave a word of knowledge. She said, somebody's been worrying about their daughter's tuition, about their child's tuition. And she said, it's paid. And I literally saw God send the money out of nowhere, and her tuition was paid.
Dang.
I wanted to just, get up and run around that auditorium. I was so excited,
Yeah.
But, those are the times that you understand that in this life, you need God. You cannot do this by yourself.
Yeah.
And God will fight for you, and he will provide for you as a single mother.
I got a couple more questions. One of them I have heard, I'll say white people, and I understand these sentiments, but this is a safe place for me to ask you all. Is it like I've heard people say, well, now it's an advantage to be a minority. Now that's who the people want to hire. They want to hire the woman for diversity. They want to hire the Hispanic for diversity. Do y'all think that it has gone that far to where you could actually call it an advantage?
They want to or have to, because those are two totally different things.
No, I mean, I understand it. It seems as if, like, for example, the whole, there is a derogatory feel from white straight male. We've all heard that, white straight male. Like, it's kind of the demographic that we are looking down on. And I don't think that the frustrations that a lot of people have are merited, honestly. But I can also see, and I would put it this way: if it was an advantage, I would say, well, awesome. It's taken a long time. Let's flip the roles here a little bit and have people that didn't have the advantage now.
This is what I'm gonna say on that. So I don't think that black people, brown people in general, want that advantage, because if you're going to hire just any brown person and that brown person sucks, then it looks bad on all brown people. And then you're never going to hire a brown person for a job that actually matters. I think brown people just want the opportunity to legit have an opportunity. Mm. So if you would not worry about how many brown people that you were hiring and just hire the best candidate, regardless if they're brown or not, we'd all be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from my personal perspective, I see the value of having diversity around me. Mm. So when you bring me into your organization, I'm going to bring a different perspective.
Yeah.
But she's also qualified.
Right.
You can't just go out there in the middle of the streets and pick Rodney Smith, who's going to say something crazy. Because you laugh. You don't represent all brown people or all white people, but we represent all black people when we go out. Everywhere. Because if we do anything...
Unjustifiably so.
Right. Like if I go out there and I slap somebody, all black people are angry and abuse people.
If I go out and slap, I'm just a crazy dude.
You just a crazy white dude.
That's true. Oh. Yeah, that was, Val Jones, so much, my mom's age, and her and Mr. Arthur helped me understand why the whole Will Smith thing didn't sit well with black people, just from a perspective of, great, there you go, fueling the stereotype sort of thing. And that's something that I didn't even have eyes to see. I was just like, just a Hollywood guy losing his temper. being dumb, but
but also, Pastor T, when we talk about what those who came before us they've done, the responsibility to do well is there. Mm-hmm. That you want to do well, you want to make sure that you're working hard.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we as brown people do a poor job of teaching our kids the importance of who they are, where they came from, and what their forefathers went through. Because I know my mom was always like, your last name is Copeland. You better not go outside of these walls and do something that's going to put some dirt on it. And I do the same thing to Malia. I'm like, hey, people know who you are. You know who you are. There's an expectation to having my name. So don't you go out there being crazy. Mm-hmm. Because your grandma sat in the school and had the N-word wrote down on her desk and people were spitting on her and all of these things just so that you could do the things that you're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah. I was getting old, so I forget things. So I'm trying to find first and last name. But are y'all familiar with Coming of Age in Mississippi? Oh, Anne Moody. It's a memoir, and it's one of the civil rights activists that you don't really hear a whole lot about. But reading her story, I mean and that's why when you asked T about the current appreciation for the civil rights movement, I mean, fresh off of reading this book, it's like she spent like her whole adult life like putting herself in the most horrible situations for the betterment of a future generation. Like one of the famous sit-ins that, basically when the documentaries talk about the sit-ins, one of the famous ones that you see on TV all the time, she's one of the women sitting there. And it's like, gosh, it really is unbelievable when you think about the lived experience of African Americans in that time period. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The sort of things that they, fought through. And I think that it's easy to overlook how recent those connections are. Like I have buddies of mine whose grandparents lived it. So they're hearing stories from their actual grandparents. I mean, I know how close I was to my grandparents. I could not imagine hearing real life stories of the things that they went through, I mean, that's when it really brings it home for sure.
I mean, that's the Star Spangled Banner effect. Like everyone sings a song and they're like, land of the free, home of the brave. Well, for brown people, they ain't always been free.
Right.
But they've always been brave.
Right.
Like they've had to endure the sit-ins. They've had to endure the lynchings. They've had to endure all of those things.
Right.
So when we're sitting there singing that song, like that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. I like what Propaganda says. He's like, I don't hate America. I just want America to deliver on its promises, which is very true. Very true. All right. So we're going to end with a real scenario. I've often wanted to talk about this and get some other perspectives because my mind has shifted on this big time. So it was my last couple of years of teaching. I was at a school on Edisto Island called Jane Edwards. So it's about 90% African American and a pretty small school, the middle school total of like 70 kids. So I'm teaching all the kids math. Well, one of the years I was a candidate for Teacher of the Year, and it was down to, I think, 2 other teachers, and they did it kind of weird. What they did is they wanted me to write like a little snapshot of my background as a teacher, kind of informative. If I want to try to be persuasive to try to get Teacher of the Year at the school, I could go that route. Well, the other person who was trying to get Teacher of the Year, a friend of mine, and this is why it was surprising to actually read this, because I'm like, well, we're also friends. So African American woman, but she basically made a case. So basically, what I wrote down and what she wrote down got passed around to all the other teachers, and the teachers voted for who Teacher of the Year was. And she made a big case for basically summarizing what message are we sending to these kids when you have two candidates for Teacher of the Year. One is a African-American woman and one is a white male. What kind of message are we sending? And at that time, I was like, how are we making this a race issue? This is just two teachers, candidates for Teacher of the Year. Now, 46 years old, I really understand where she's coming from. I'm not necessarily saying that I would agree that teachers need to vote based on what kind of message are we sending to the kids, but I really do understand where she was coming from with those sentiments, and I'm just curious what y'all think about that.
You know, when I hear that, I just think about seeing someone in a place, in a position that looks like us, does a tremendous, it's just tremendous to the kids that are coming. They see someone in a position that actually looks like them. And that encourages them to dream big.
Right. You got any thoughts on that?
I mean, representation definitely matters. It really does. But fairly, if someone fairly beat me out of something, I'm okay with it. White, brown, don't really care. But I do understand the importance of giving vision to kids who don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Teacher of the Year would probably be where I would try and prove that point, but I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Representation matters, but you also want to make sure that you earn. I know for me personally, from my standpoint, and a lot of the individuals that I speak with, I believe most individuals, most women want to make sure you earn everything that you get, that it's not about anything other than the fact that you have worked hard, you have sacrificed, you have done all that you can, and it's appreciated and celebrated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. If you enjoy the podcast, we'd love for you to give us some love by rating us on iTunes or Spotify. Thanks so much for listening.